On a Tuesday evening. I really appreciate everybody showing up. I know this is a little out of the normal schedule. I was going to just tell a bunch of dirty Drupal stories, but they decided to videotape it, so I'm just going to talk about Drupal Commons instead, and wait till everybody has at least a couple of drinks, and then I'll get into some what goes on behind the scenes at DrupalCon. Kind of anecdotes. So I'm just going to run through and give you a bit of a sense of what's going on with Drupal Commons. There's a few different things there. If anybody has some requirements, or anybody is working on a Drupal Commons project or a Drupal project that's social and they want to see something added, love to have your input early, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And do a couple introductions. I didn't know Mark was going to be here, so I'll introduce Mark too. But Mark Sonnebaum works on our professional services team, and he's one of the people who helps us to do large implementations from an architecture standpoint of Drupal Commons. Particularly, one of the first ones that we did was for the World Economic Forum and for a site called welcome.org, and I'll show a little bit of their splash page later on. So great to have you here. And then Todd Barnett is our VP of Sales for the Western region and expanding, and he's right there at the back. He's the one with the raccoon eyes because he was on vacation on a houseboat for a week. So he's been getting the sun. Where in California we refer to 80 degrees as really, really high, as opposed to the life-threatening sprints between the air-conditioned car and the building that occur out here.
Night, so.
Yeah. And David was kind enough to, he knows I'm training for a marathon, so he was kind enough to point out some excellent trail running that I can do here before 6 a.m. in the morning. So I'm looking forward to that, which is 4 a.m. California time, if you're not keeping track. And so I'm Kieran Lal. I'm the Technical Director for Business Development. I've had many titles in my life. The ones that I'm allowed to tell you about include Drupal Community Adventure Guide, where for the first three and a half years of Acquia's existence, I spent a lot of time, I still do, with the community and helping people navigate through the Drupal project. And for those of you who are new to Drupal, you'll understand it's quite a bit of an adventure to figure out why do these people write code for free? Why do they stay up all night long and do this for me? And then why won't they fix my bugs when it's absolutely critical for free? And how could something free and so easy cause me so much angst in my relationships? Because I'm sitting on my laptop at midnight on Saturday night trying to configure my site and figure out why it's broken. So, these are some of the many titles that I've held, and but I do participate actively in the Drupal project. I do have a couple other things that I help work on. I'm a coordinator for the Drupal security team of about 35 folks, and they do a pretty solid job in helping to review and to deal with the security process for the Drupal project. And I worked on Drupal.org for about 5 years. I helped raise money and lead the redesign of Drupal.org. And then I help with infrastructure, mostly at a funding standpoint at this point, and I'm a director of business development for the Drupal Association. So I'm active in the Drupal project, and I've been active in DrupalCon Boston and helped architect DrupalCon San Francisco. And presuming that the rioters don't burn down our stadium in Croydon, then I'll be escorted to and from my hotel to DrupalCon London next week. We're waiting to see if how wildly out of control things get there. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about Acquia just for another minute, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Drupal Commons. So Acquia, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, just to give you a little bit of a pitch, we're about 130 employees, on our way to 200 or so. Started, basically I got a phone call about 4 years and 2 weeks ago Jay had secured a line of funding to do a seed round to see if we could make something happen in this Drupal space. And I knew Dries for a long time and worked actively in the Drupal project, and so I got involved early as employee 2 or employee 4, depending on how you count it. And we've grown great. I think we're probably in 10 or 12 quarters of growth now, and we just announced that we raised about $15 million in our Series D round. about 2 weeks ago. So continue to see lots of activity, and we continue to invest a lot of that money back in the Drupal project, and that enables us to do things and take risks, like work on Drupal Commons and make those releases, and it enables us to do marketing and sales activities and come out in the field here and go to other towns and help work with partners like LevelTen to really help expand Drupal. This is the home of Vignette. Is Vignette from Austin or Dallas? Austin, yeah. So we look forward to stealing their $90 million in recurring annual revenue for an inferior product.
You sound like Obama.
I do? Okay. Well, here, let me here. Stealing the revenue?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see what I can do for you here.
Yeah.
Thanks. Let's try that one. There we go. So great segue. One of the fun things that I get to do in my job is go to places like the White House. And so in March of 2009, we ran DrupalCon DC, and I was able to have the privilege of chasing down this gentleman on the right, David Cole. They had built recovery.gov through the Office of Management and Budget, and we kept sending one-way messages to the White House. And eventually we got a call back while we were in DC, and they said, "Can you come and talk to us about open source?" And potentially the use of Drupal as some market research. So Dries and I went over, and we spent a bunch of time with them, talking to them about how to save money, taxpayer money, your money, by using Drupal. And they learned it wasn't necessarily cheaper, but they did learn it was better. So we'll leave it at that for now. Okay, back to the presentation. So I think one of the first things that we looked at is when we started looking in this space to see how different organizations were using it. One of the best implementations that we saw was Symantec Connect. And so what this is a large company like Symantec. They buy a lot of software companies. They have a lot of software products, and they're trying to support many different customers. And so, typically the way an enterprise would do this is they'd go out and they'd hire a large number of people to basically answer phone questions, email questions, and do support like this. And they decided that they could shake things up by putting up a community site where people could get information. And the basic idea was that the people who use their products in many cases are actually smarter collectively than the people who build them. And so if they got all those people together on a community site, they'd be able to answer each other's questions more effectively and faster than their support team could. And so they actually put together a budget, and they offer points, and they reward people who are actively participating in their community. And I think we're going to see this as a big trend where people are going to effectively get paid at some level to, whether through direct compensation or through some level of rewards, to actively participate and share their expertise. And so this is one of the better examples of this. And I'll power through a couple other examples here. Here's Intel. So Intel is, obviously trying to. They go and they produce a very expensive and a very complex product, and then they get the chipset out there, and which is the Atom chip, and then they want as many people as possible to learn how to program against it. I'm getting smiles here. Is this part of? Is this?
We just talked about it. Sorry.
Okay. That's an Atom chip is right there. Okay, great. So they're looking, to try to convince manufacturers and users to build products, demand products from the marketplace, and so educating their developers is really key. And so putting up a website that can do that is really important. And Drupal is probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular, platforms for developer communities that we see out there. Here's a fun story. So we're going to London in a couple of weeks for DrupalCon. And if you've been following the news lately, we're in a bit of an economic mess. Blame the right, blame the left, blame the middle. But the English went through this a while back, and so what happened was they would put out these statistics which were fudged effectively, right? So they go and they calculate things, and then they decide that in the month of July that the number of the lifetime expectancy of babies was suddenly different for that month, so that they could fudge the statistics in that way. They could take a certain number of people who were unemployed out of the market space, and then therefore they could reduce the amount of people who were unemployed, right? These are the kinds of games that politicians like to play. And so what ended up happening was for a long time, people just stopped trusting the government in the United Kingdom. And so what they had to do was they had to go out and get an ombudsperson who basically would certify and verify every statistic that the government would put out, because nobody believed anything they were saying anymore. Right? Starting to sound familiar? Okay, lots of, apparently you're all dissatisfied with the job that Congress is doing, so you should understand what I'm talking about, according to the latest polls. And so as part of that effort, in a few years later, but a part of that effort, they decided that this notion of open government was really important. And so they went and they found a guy named Tim Berners-Lee, who I think at the time was at MIT, he was stationed at MIT, but he's certainly an English gentleman. And he was called in by his government and said, how can we open government? How can we get this data out there? And so they needed to put this data on a website. And so when they want to release statistics like, here's what the Valium content is of the Thames River, then they need to publish that statistic and get that data out there. If they want to say the number of houses that are burned in Croydon, then they need to get that statistic out there. If they need to say this is how many people are employed, or this is how many people are on the dole, or this is the amount of energy generated from wave generators off the coast of Ireland. They need to get that information out there. But it's not good enough to just dump raw data out there. You've really got to have a group of people who are smart, who understand that data, who want to mash it up, want to do stuff. They want to do cool and fun stuff, like take the data that the government's putting out there and then mash it up on a mobile device, for example. I had a mobile device here. And so what they did is they created this community site with all kinds of fun stuff, where forums that people could submit ideas, and they could sit there and they talk about the data that's being put out by these different agencies and really try to collaborate together. And so that they built that on Drupal, and then the United States government followed suit shortly after. They had originally built a custom PHP application for data.gov, and then and eventually they moved to Drupal Commons, and so that's up there as well. NASCAR, Turner Broadcasting, which was purchased as part of Time Warner and part of the AOL Time Warner, and so they have hundreds of sites. Several hundred sites like Cartoon Network, all kinds of sports channels, SI Kids, all that kind of stuff. And so when they're going to stand up sites, they have Drupal as their main platform. So they'll probably put up somewhere between 300 and 600 Drupal sites. Basically everything smaller than CNN.com, doing about 400 million page views a month, is going to be on Drupal. For websites. And so NASCAR is one of the most popular sports in the country, and so there's lots of engagement there. And then we were happy to announce this a couple of weeks ago. We worked really closely with Twitter, and so Twitter needed to launch a developer community. And think about the trends that you're seeing right now. How many people have got Lion on their desktop, or and have you seen a preview of iOS 5 and following that? So the next generation of the iPhone, they're embedding Twitter directly into the iPhone. So now you've got like thousands and maybe tens of thousands of developers who are going to go out, and they need to come together in a community and learn how to program against the iPhone to do their, use their new messaging API and integrate with Twitter and those kinds of things. And so they needed a community site that could really scale, that could add a lot of features, and so they chose Drupal. And I worked, they're a few blocks from my house in San Francisco, so I helped work with them on this, and we have a great team that work with them to get this site up and launched. So the idea is that people basically are saying, hey, we want to build these great social communities with Drupal. We want to take all these best practices. We want to look at all these great things that businesses are doing to really win. And can we make it extensible? Can we make it so that it can scale? Can we put it on a platform that works, like Acquia Cloud? And so there's this common set of features, and so we spent a lot of time looking at what all these different great implementations we're doing. We spent some time talking to the analysts who were spending a lot of time studying all these things, and we saw this list of features here on the right-hand side. And so together, in common, we basically saw Commons. And in particular, we named it after Boston Commons, which is a great park, which was featured in the 80s television hit Cheers, just off the corner there. And so we put together that central set of features. And so let's take a look at, when we put together that set of features, let's take a look at what all the different business implementations are. And so customer engagement, employee enablement, channel and external communities, and vertical use cases. Is anybody considering one of these use cases for their organization, or as a contract, or works for a business that's considering that? I see some nodding heads. Okay, good. Okay. Great. So I'll stop here for a second and just see if there's any questions, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them now before I go on for too long. Okay. Right. Well, the idea is that using all these features and doing all these things, you get greater innovation. Great example is Google Plus came out within 24 hours. There was a module on Drupal.org for Google Plus. Greater flexibility. We see a lot of people having to buy these CMSs. Todd and I have been working on accounts where we see customers having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for proprietary social systems, proprietary CMSs, and then they find out, oops, it's not possible to change that in your CMS. And that's the nice thing about Drupal. Yes, it's a framework. Yes, frameworks have limitations. At the same time, you've got the source code. If you have to get around it, you can really manipulate Drupal in a really positive way if you've got the right skills to be able to get the flexibility you need. And then, of course, the fact that Drupal Commons is free, and free in terms of software licensing, that helps bring down your total cost of innovation. So if you have to spin out 20 of these in a row or something like that, you don't have to invest as much money in the software licensing. You can use it to add to features or customization later on. So here's a few different things around customer engagement. And I did a webinar last week on Microsoft, or a couple weeks ago on Microsoft Dynamics in Drupal. But Symantec wanted to plug in CRM and have a special theme. But I did some stuff on, I did a webinar on Dogfish Brewery. So Dogfish Brewery connects into Microsoft CRM in the back end. They sell beer so their staff members can, if you're a partner of theirs, you can go up to a store and you can order discounted beer from them. Or if you're on the website, you can buy hats and shirts and things like that, and that's all plugged into the back-end CRM system and updating your profile. And so that's really interesting about getting your website connected to your CRM. There's social CRM, so folks like 7th Generation are trying to get reviews and have a shopping cart and trying to get all kinds of social feedback. Mercedes-Benz launched a site. I'll show that a little bit later, but they wanted all sorts of photo galleries and voting. And I was forwarding Todd an article about a great new Mercedes-Benz. It's about $120,000, and it's a really beautiful AMG, super souped up one. And so these are the kinds of things that you want to get the back and forth dialogue going on about brands and what people are talking about and sharing, and you want to be able to capture some of that. So being able to get the social market research and see what things, get these sites out there and get that level of engagement going is really important for brands like Mercedes-Benz because they can hear in real time what's important. And then one of my favorites is social marketing. Red Hat's a customer of mine, and they wanted to build some communities, and they own application platforms. In fact, they own JBoss, which is one of the most popular application platforms in the world. And but when they had to go build out some communities, they decided to go build it on Drupal. And so we'll talk a little bit about how they integrated some stuff. For employee enablement, Verizon, who's on about 45,000 of the 90,000 employees that are on strike right now. But they have a gigantic intranet that's based off of Drupal, and so they plug in and do all kinds of interesting stuff. Black Hills Corporation, very interesting. They use a lot of SharePoint, traditionally a Microsoft shop, but they wanted to innovate in the social space. They're an energy company, I believe in the Dakotas, I think South Dakota, and they want to get collaboration because they run multiple power plants and energy points, and I want to say, can we share information? Can we share our expertise more quickly? And so they're really interested in seeing if they can get that expertise shared by being social inside the company. And then Novell does integration with document management systems as well. So they want to, again, get their knowledge base up and running. And then there's a couple other communities. One of them is DISA. And so basically the idea there is that they'll run a contest. Let's say an example is DARPA, the people who funded the internet development originally through the ARPANET. They'll run a contest and put up a prize for something like $10 million. And sorry, I'm trying to get rid of that. So they'll go out and they'll say, hey, go see if you can build see if you can build a car that can drive through the desert for 75 miles, right? All the way from all the way across bridges, through boulders, through gullies and stuff like that. And so they'll fund this contest, and lots of people will go in and enter it. But then at some point, people will say, that stuff that you did to get people to cross the desert for 75 miles in Las Vegas is part of this DARPA research project, that's actually really interesting for some of our troops in the field in Afghanistan or Iraq. Could we use some of those algorithms inside the Department of Defense to be able to navigate and get some of our unmanned vehicles to be able to navigate? So how can they set up collaboration in the same way that Drupal sets up collaboration, but do it internally? And so they have SourceForge, and that allows them to share the code, put the algorithms up there, have the right licensing, the right headers. They can have some tasks and some issue queues, but it's not particularly social. And so when you've got hundreds of thousands of employees and tens of thousands of contractors who are out there building these things, you want them to be able to plug into these sites, get social, ask questions, and then be able to share these algorithms, be able to share the latest R&D and get it going. And so we help them stand up a commons on top of their source code and be able to do ideation and things like that. And then Twitter, we kind of talked about that a little bit, but they want to be able to plug in to plug in systems to be able to share their strategic goals. And they run all of their key username and passwords for people who have to sign up for developer accounts. Because as a developer, you get access to certain things with the API if you get a formal account. And then there's also some stuff around billing if you have to purchase lots of consumption of Twitter's APIs. For example, if you wanted to track absolutely everything on Twitter, you've got to pay for that right to use that sort of thing. Okay, and then Open Education, Babson, one of the best known entrepreneurial schools in the United States and the world, 18 years in a row. And so they wanted to be able to plug in Facebook. And then the GSA, Government Services Agency, they do about something in the neighborhood of like $1.7 trillion in purchasing a year. So they have about 400,000 cars that they purchase and manage. And so if you're part of Department of Homeland Security, I was over there, and they run about a $70 billion budget. So if they go and they buy pens, they're going to buy a lot of pens. And if they find out that those pens are defective, they would like to know that before they bought them. So if a sub-agency like FEMA, for example, determines that these pens are better than these pens, they want to know before they do purchasing. And so being able to get all the purchasing managers together and share intelligence and share processes for how to do purchasing more effectively when you're doing $1.7 trillion worth of purchasing is a really big deal for them. So the GSA stood up a site called Interact to be able to help them to do that. So we talked about some of these things before. Innovation, 10,000 modules, growing all the time. You have access to the source code, great framework, great set of APIs to do customization, security and scalability. We've proven over and over again that Drupal can scale. We're going to start seeing this year multiple sites. We think multiple sites will come on, but at a minimum one site will come on that'll do over 1 billion page views a month, which will be a Drupal site. So some very big ones coming on. And then of course, no license fee, so you don't have to pay as your site gets bigger. You can start off on that, and then you got to save your money to pay for other kinds of services. Okay, I'm just going to showcase some of these sites. Hopefully we'll see at least one of the presidential candidates, whoever gets elected, will certainly be running Drupal, unless it's Michelle Bachmann. She'll be running something else. And then Mercedes-Benz, beautiful car, beautiful site, and Interact. And then this is the GSA, one where they do all the purchasing. And then Red Hat, great customer portal site, be able to go in, ask questions. And this is a marketing team that wanted to be able to interact. And they didn't have a lot of technologists on staff, so they were eager to get this developed quickly with PHP resources and Drupal resources. Then there's another site. Hang on a second. I mentioned that I was going to share it with you. And then here's another site. This is the site that Mark worked on, the World Economic Forum. So Bono, Bill Clinton, Martin Feldman from the National Economic Advisors Bureau, the guys who basically ultimately determine when a recession starts and ends. I think they're probably pretty busy tonight. Get together, they fly to Davos, Switzerland, they're now flying to other cities, and they basically get together and they talk about economic issues, about debt issues, about the biggest issues in the world. They try to bring people with a lot of celebrity or a lot of care about how the world's evolving and get them together on this private network. And so this was originally, I think, a SharePoint site. Is that right, Mark?
SharePoint and Flex.
SharePoint and Flex, and then so part of the requirements were to reduce the user experience transition from the old site to the new site, so try to keep as many things similar as possible, but allow them to innovate and add new features. And so they made the transition. I think originally the Microsoft folks had said it was going to take a year to be able to do that if they did it on SharePoint or something like that.
Yeah, their biggest problem is that they're completely inflexible, but they want a lot of little things, but it's like every little thing was a gigantic change that they could never get done.
Yeah.
And so Drupal and Commons let them iterate a lot faster.
Great. And so this is a good example of a private site. I also wanted to show off this. This is the showcase site that we launched recently. And so if you're ever looking to see, and you want to say, let's see, you want to see showcase sites in, where's Techno? What is that, healthcare? Yeah. Okay, so there's 456 sites, healthcare sites for Drupal. So if you ever want to show off some examples there, you can click on that and show off those sites. And I'll loop back to this in a little bit. Okay. There you go. Squeeze through some of those. Okay, and there's a long list of sites, and so I think what makes Drupal Commons special is that we have all these people. This is a picture from DrupalCon Copenhagen. What makes it special is that we have all these people who have different use cases, whether it's content editors who are really saying, hey, I want to tweak Drupal out of the box, I want to make it easier to use, or whether it's developers who are saying, hey, I want to be able to roll out features, like Mark was saying, I want to just roll out some small changes quickly, whatever it is. All these people are coming together, they're collaborating, they're making an amazing wave of innovation around social software, and so I think Commons is really competitive from that standpoint. Because it's Drupal users group, is it safe to assume that everybody's familiar with some Drupal basics? Anybody brand new to Drupal? Okay. Are you three together? You just happen to sit the three people who didn't know Drupal, who were like afraid, and you were like, let's just get completely surrounded and circled. Okay. Would any of you three gentlemen like a beer? Okay, can we get 3 beers brought over to the new Drupalers? We got to treat them in style. What choices do we have on top?
We got Shinerbach.
Shinerbach and Shinerbach and Shinerbach?
Yes.
Whichever one they want.
What about that really expensive? Tom's not in the room, is he? Yeah, why don't you crack open that really great bottle of champagne that he's been saving?
Then you're gonna have to fight Taylor though.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, we'll start with beer.
Miller Lite too.
Okay, Miller Lite or beer. Well, just for you guys, I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes going over some basics. But the key is that you can customize Drupal and the different kinds of users who use it. And so the idea is that we're drinking your good stuff, Tom. The idea is that you can have anonymous users, people who don't log into your site, people who log into your site, and then people with power privileges. And what's key is that you can allow people to have very fine-grained control of who can do what, who can edit things, who can delete things. And so, again, it's that customization. My business runs this way. I don't want to change my business. I need to get down and be able to change things or allow this person to do this, but not allow this other person to do the same thing. And so that customization around roles is really critical. Okay, and so unlimited customization of roles, permissions, and views, lists of content. And then if you want to do all kinds of categorization, all kinds of organization, one of the things that we're seeing is Drupal being as a platform. So we've had lots of conversations where the marketing team says, we have 3 weeks to stand up a quick site. Let's stand up a quick site. And we're not going to invest a lot of money and a lot of budget. We don't have a lot of time. Let's get it up quickly. And then somebody else says, oh, we have to get our .com up. That's a 1-year RFP process. We're going to spend a lot of money. It's going to be a big deal. And then somebody else says, we're going to stand up an intranet. And then somebody else says in marketing says, oh, we need to get a social community up. And so now all of a sudden you're buying 4 different platforms. And one of the great things about the Drupal CMS is that if you've got to stand up a community site or you've got to add some level of features in between, you can use just one platform, Drupal, and be able to use it across many different use cases. And so here in Commons, you get that advantage. You can start on Commons. You can run another Drupal site. You can run it all on the same site. You can add groups, all kinds of fun stuff like that. Does anybody else want a beer? Because you guys did a really fast, great job. You want one beer here?
Yes.
Okay, quick question. Go ahead.
Can I help yourself? Want a beer?
Is Commons just basically a distribution?
Great question. So the question was, is Commons just basically a distribution? Yes. At one level, it is a distribution, and it's just basically, I think what Todd was quoting.
Supported distribution?
Sure, yeah. Acquia will support any use of Drupal that you're using. So you can always, if you're using Drupal, it can be supported at an enterprise level. But we do make the source code available as a distribution, so it's something like 150 contributed modules added onto core Drupal, and then downloadable, and you can set it up. But you can also go and put it in a cloud environment that's dedicated to scale, And then if you want, you can also purchase it as software as a service. So you can have it and consume it just like you would any other software as a service like Google, like Gmail or Salesforce or something like that.
So that distribution then is comprehensive of all the different use cases that you went through earlier?
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously customization in all of them, in that the theme is custom, the images are custom, and things like that. And in Mark's case, when he was working at the World Economic Forum, they started off with Commons, and then as they moved on, they had to narrow down and scope and slice with a scalpel.
From a module standpoint, though,
Yeah, I don't know how many.
From the model standpoint, you're mostly going to be able to stay with what you have, but